Everybody, I wanted to give you some help with this assignment 5.5 because it's a little tricky. And if you haven't been here all year, you might have missed this excerpt from Bad Boy, which is a memoir by Walter Dean Myers. And this assignment asks you to compare and contrast the theme in this memoir, the story from Walter Dean Myers, with the one from Soul Surfer by Bethany Hamilton. The problem is we read this memoir all the way back in Module 2. So I have it here and I'm going to read it to you to make it a little bit easier for you. So it says, Harlem is the first place called home that I can remember. It was a magical place, alive with music that spilled onto the busy streets from tenement windows and full of colors and smells that filled my senses and made my heart beat faster. The earliest memory I have is of a woman who picked me up on Sunday mornings to take me to Sunday school. She would have 5 to 10 children with her when she rang our bell on 126th Street, and we would go through the streets holding hands and singing Jesus Loves Me on our way to Abyssinian Baptists. I remember being comforted by the fact that Jesus, whom I didn't even know, thought so much of me. After church, we would be brought home again holding hands and singing our way through the streets of Harlem. What life was about for me in those early years was being with the woman I was learning to call Mama. When Florence Dean was home, I would follow her from room to room as she cleaned, talking about anything that came to mind, knowing that she would always listen. Any house in which she lived was kept spotless. Mama had a time to sweep the floors and a time to mop them. There was a time to wash clothes and a time to iron them, fold them, and put them away. Each holiday meant taking all the dishes down from the shelves, even the ones we never used, and carefully washing and drying them, as well as the windows of the dish cabinet. Mama didn't work outside the house when I first arrived in New York, but that changed from time to time. I remember that when I was 4, a woman in the building was taken on as my caretaker during the days when Mama worked. Mama did what she called day's work, meaning that she cleaned other people's apartments and was paid by the day. The woman who took care of me gave that chore to her children, who delighted in torturing me by hiding in the closet and making believe there were ghosts. I was a bawler, screaming in fear at all the appropriate moments, which delighted them. I learned how mindlessly cruel some children could be. We were far away from credit cards in those days, and the equivalent was an account at the corner grocery. Mama, who was determined that I should never be hungry, arranged with the grocer to give me food if I was hungry and to put it on her account. What I actually did, when I had the chance, was buy penny squares of chocolate. Soon, every kid on the block knew that I could get free chocolates. One weekend, both the grocer and I got a good talking to, and my account came to a crashing end. What I loved most about Harlem, though, was the music. There were radios everywhere, and little girls jumped double dutch to Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, and Glenn Miller. My sisters, Jerry and Viola, danced with me in the house, but the girls in the street wouldn't dance with me. So I danced by myself. I had taught myself a little dance that I called the boogie. My dancing was amusing enough for people to throw pennies to me when I danced. When I had enough pennies, I would scoop them up and run to the grocer's to buy my favorite colored icy pops. I could keep this up for hours and loved it until one day I had a stomachache and went home crying. When Mama got home from work, she put me on the toilet and sat on the edge of the bathtub to comfort me. Within minutes, I was being snatched up and rushed to Knickerbocker Hospital. Mama had reasoned that the red liquid passing through my intestines had to be blood. At the hospital, the doctors were equally alarmed until a few tests confirmed that I had consumed so many icy pops that the food coloring was going straight through. It was clear I needed more supervision during the day, and Mama found another babysitter who took care of a number of children. This woman had a playground apparatus in her backyard, which I liked a lot. I was told not to play on the climbing bars, but I tried them anyway. Getting to the top was easy enough and not nearly as exciting as falling off, head first, onto the cement below. I've always had a big head, and I must have looked a sight that night with bandages covering half my face. When Mama picked me up, she decided to stay home to take care of me for a while. Mama also liked to read true romance magazines and would let me sit on her lap as she read aloud. The sound of Mama's voice in our sun-drenched Harlem kitchen was like a special kind of music meant for only me. It was almost a secret language, one that only the two of us understood. I don't think she ever used that special voice with my sisters or my father. She was small, barely over 5 feet tall, and I was soon too big to sit on her lap. Then she would sit at the kitchen table, and I would sit on a chair with wooden arms and a fabric body that I loved, and listen to the sound of her voice as she half read, half acted out the stories of lost loves and sudden passions. I think she liked talking to me. She could tell me things she wouldn't tell other people. Once she told me that she liked to yodel and that she had done so as a child. She yodeled for me, and I thought it was marvelous. When I told my father, he laughed, and she wouldn't yodel for him. Sometimes she would ask me simple questions like, what did I think the weather would be the next day? And stop whatever she was doing and wait for an answer. I would have the words in my head and would try to get them out as quickly as I could, putting them in as good an order as I could. Why don't you just marry Mama? My sister Viola complained. You always have something to say to her. I asked Mama about that later, and she said no, she already had a husband, Herbert. Years later, when I had learned to use words better, I lost my ability to speak so freely with Mama. I didn't want to learn to read so much as I wanted to be like Mama. I liked words and talking, and I wanted to be able to look at the magazines and tell her the stories as she did for me. I told her that I wanted to do this, and she rearranged our chairs so we were sitting side by side in the kitchen, with her pointing out the words as she read them. Slowly, with Mama's help, I learned to read. Before long, I could read well enough to read to Mama as she did the housework. What we had to read were Mama's True Romance magazines and a few classic comics. I didn't understand much of what I was reading, but I was on my way. Okay, so that was Walter Dean Meyer's memoir. He's remembering being a child and living in Harlem with his mama. He actually is adopted, so that's why he says a woman he learned to call mama. So the next memoir is this one. It's much shorter. It's by a young woman named Bethany Hamilton. So let's see what similarities we can find between these two memoirs, which are just kind of people writing about their memories about their lives. So this one's titled Roots. It says, a lot of who I am comes from my parents. They're incredible people who've always worked very hard to reach their goals. I know a lot of teenagers think their parents are total aliens from another planet, but I actually think mine are pretty cool. They not only support me in everything I want to do, but they also really inspire me to be a great surfer. And even more important, a great human being. My dad was the ultimate surfer nut. Picture this. When I do, it cracks me up. It's the dead of winter in Ocean City, New Jersey. Icicles are hanging from the edges of buildings, and the snow is swirling around the sidewalks, rapidly burying the curbs and making huge mounds against the buildings. Everyone is bundled against the cold and scraping the ice off their car windows. Along comes my dad, Tom Hamilton, this skinny 17-year-old trudging through the snowbanks with a surfboard on his head and his beaver tail hat, a la Davy Crockett, flapping behind him. Dressed in a primitive, thick, black diving wetsuit, he would grease his armpits with thick Vaseline to ward off wetsuit rash. Ugh. And looking like the creature from the Black Lagoon, he would head out, blizzard and all, to his favorite Ocean City surf spot, 10th Street. There, he'd meet up with his best buddy, Monk, and the two of them would cross a deserted beach, frosted white, to surf the icy gray Atlantic in conditions so severe that their eyebrows would often freeze solid. Tom and Monk started surfing together as little kids, around age 13 and 14, in the summer of 1962. Within a few years, both boys were dedicated fanatics who took their sport seriously year-round. In the winter, we would do anything we could think of to keep warm, my dad has told me. There were no leashes on surfboards, so if you fell off during the winter months, the swim to the beach was brutally cold. We came up with the idea to pour hot water down our wetsuits before going surfing to give us a little edge in the cold. We would be steaming like tea kettles all the way to the beach. I always wondered how my dad knew he was born to be a surfer. When I asked him, he says, It was more like destiny took him by the hand and led him to the waves. His parents, George and Mary Hamilton, moved with their 4 kids around New Jersey a few times before settling in Ocean City. While George set up his dental practice, Mary made sure that my dad and his 2 brothers and his sister were deeply involved in the sport of swimming. One day, my grandpa, Dr. George, brought home a surfboard for my dad. It was a factory-produced pop-out model, as opposed to a normal hand-shaped surfboard that was on sale at, of all places, a hardware store. One try, and Dad was hooked. Soon, he and Monk were part of the regular surf scene on the Jersey Shore. If Grandpa had only known the daily ritual he created. Okay, that's it. So a little shorter, a little easier to understand, but what are they both talking about? What I highlighted a couple things that stand out to me, and it has to do with parents. So even though Walter Dean Myers is talking about his mom, and it's a very different lifestyle than what Bethany Hamilton is talking about, and it's her dad, they both have to do with parents. And they both have pretty good parents, in my opinion. So what do you think they're saying about their parents? And is it similar? Take a look at what I've highlighted here and see how they can contribute to the theme or the lesson. What do we learn about parents? Is there a message we can learn from both of them about their parents? So I want you to put down similarities here. Like maybe you can say they both have nice parents. Okay. What's different? Well, Walter's is a mom, while Bethany, I think her name is talking about her dad. Okay, now we need textual evidence. So textual evidence would be a quote. So here she says, my dad is the ultimate surfer net. Okay, so that's a quote. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to put it here in the box. And that shows that she's talking about his mom. Or sorry, it shows that she is talking about her dad. Now Walter Dean is talking about his mom, and we can find a quote here. This has to do with his mom. It shows he's talking about his mom. And I'm going to put it in here and put it in quotes. Because that's what textual evidence is, if you forgot. It's a quotation. So we can do the same thing here. Where does it show in the story that Bethany has a nice dad? Well, she says her parents are incredible people that have always worked hard to reach their goals. I don't think people call their parents incredible if they're not very nice. So we can put that there. Now, how about Walter's mom being nice? I remember he said that she took care of him and that she made sure that he had food at the grocer. So right here, Mama, who was determined that I should never be hungry, arranged with the grocer to give me food. So that's pretty nice that she did that for him. So I'm going to put that in there as evidence, textual evidence that shows that he has a nice mom. Okay, now I want you to do the rest on your own. Give me another similarity and another difference all by yourself that shows something about the theme or the lesson. What do we find out about their parents? I highlighted some things in here, like the word inspire. How did they inspire them, or how did they have an impact on their lives? And if you need more help, reach out to me, but I think this should get you started on this assignment. Okay, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.